Hey everyone, hope you are having an amazing day. It's Tom. Today's episode name is Secret Nazi Antarctic Bases and Operation High Jump. The polar regions are inaccessible to most people due to their extremely harsh conditions. Nevertheless, they were of interest to the powers of this world, including the Americans, the Russians, and in their time also the Nazis. During the World War II, the Nazis did many special secret experiments in various parts of the planet in their quest for world domination. They were also looking around the planet for mythical and religious artifacts and extraterrestrial technologies to help them win the war. In Czechia, for example, they searched at Houska Castle, where the gate to hell is located. It is common knowledge that the Nazis were obsessed with the occult, including their Führer. The secret companies Thule and Annerbe were operating in the conquered territories at the time. Their interest was magic, runic symbolism, and the search for the mythical Atlantis. In addition, some Nazi and NSDAP officials believed that Antarctica was the lost Atlantis. They hoped that the advanced technologies of this extinct civilization could be discovered there. There were also reports that Nazi expeditions in Antarctica found ground without ice. Instead of it was covered with vegetation because there were hot springs and some other unspecified heat sources below it. The Germans also researched in inhabited areas, including the polar ones. The Germans made several expeditions to Antarctica, which are known, but there were certainly many more. The Nazis had a base here to extract fat from whales and a meteorological station. However, not everyone is convinced that they only had these two bases here, because of which the Germans cared so much about Antarctica, and it is clear that this would not really save the Nazis in the war. According to some theories, the Third Reich actually built the base for research on the UFOs that fell during the war in Poland. Although much is known from the documents about the Nazi Antarctic expedition 1938 and 39, its main task is still unknown. What actually happened during the Third Reich in Antarctica? The fact is that few moments before World War II, on December 17, 1938, the German expedition ship Schwabenland reached shores of Antarctica. Ship was under command of Captain Alfred Richer, experienced polar explorer and pilot. Schwabenland was a transport ship with a displacement of 8,000 tons, equipped with a catapult to launch the seaplane. On the ship, 24 sailors and 33 polar explorers in full armor were heading for the South Pole. The coastal area in the west of the continent was even called Neuschwabenland, where the base 211 was established. There are conspiracy theories that claims that many renowned scientists disappeared from defeated Germany after the end of World War II. These theories offer an explanation. The scientists were moved to Antarctica. There was a company formed, a society for members of the superior race. If the scientists had really disappeared there and continued to work on the development of secret weapons, has possible connection to US Navy high jump expedition to this part of the Antarctica. Operation High Jump 1946 and 47 and Operation Windmill 1947 and 48 were United States Navy operations. High Jump was the largest group of Antarctica ever, consisting of 4,700 men, 13 ships and 33 aircraft. The question is, why would anyone want to do more military training so quickly after the long and bloody war? It was evidently a secret operation led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Officially, it was a military training with a number of other important goals, such as establishing a research station, finding places for additional bases, and extending US power. However, the real purpose of the expedition is shrouded in secrecy. It is said that the high jump expedition was attacked by unidentified flying machines, so-called UFOs. Therefore, it is said that the expedition was quickly ended than originally planned, with the loss of lives and equipment, and the departure looked more like a furious escape. To this day, no one wants to comment what happened outside the Arctic Circle. Only Admiral Richard Byrd, who led the expedition later, made a certain statements from which can be deduced that Antarctica is inhabited an advanced civilization. In addition, to summarize the official results of Operation High Jump, for example, most of the 70,000 photographs taken by planes could not be used because they lacked ground checkpoints. It is said that even transcript of radio communication appeared, in which there was talk of the discovery unglaciated areas with grass on the surface. Everything could have been completely different than the official version of US Army. Various proof about the Nazi in Antarctic. Dr. Howard Buchner was a retired colonel of the army who served in the World War II and wrote 2 books about the Holy Lands. He claimed that he had been contacted by a former Nazi sailor from a submarine appearing under the pseudonym Captain Wilhelm Bernhard, who told him that the Holy Lands that is currently on display in Vienna is fake. Bernhard said that the real spear was sent by Hitler to Antarctica along with the other Nazi treasures under the command of Colonel Maximilian Hartmann. I personally doubt that Hitler sent them to a fish oil processing plant or the weather station, which means there must have been a secret base in Antarctica. The British allegedly had a secret commander base in Antarctica after the war, which was searching for the Nazi base, but they were attacked by the disc flying machines and destroyed. And it was this secret Nazi base that the writer James Robert described in his book, The British Secret War in Antarctica. In it, the author refers to the last survivor of the attack on the base of the British commando, who claimed to have been in a huge underground cave. I quote, "There were underground lakes in a huge cavity. The Nazis built a huge base in caves. They even built docks for submarines and hangars for strange planes. The energy they used was volcanic, giving heat to produce steam and helping to generate electricity. We were amazed by the number of workers swarming around like ants." End of quote. In addition, it is written about the city of Neu Berlin, or even that Adolf Hitler was hiding in Antarctica, where he was preparing for his final victory. Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, another missing elites in the Berlin apocalyptic finale, was also supposed to be present in the shelter, which was most often described by widely branched tunnel systems protected by eternal ice. As early as the 1950s, rumors began to spread among some German nationalist circles that the post-war flying saucers were in fact German weapons, which were in development further than thought and managed to be tested during the existence of the Third Reich. At the time of the German surrender in May 1945, these technologies were allegedly taken to the safety in time to the Arctic, South America and Antarctica. The number of observation of unidentifiable objects was thus attributed to the hidden Nazi presence in distant and inaccessible areas of the world. Quote by Karl Dönitz, who said in 1943, "The German submarine fleet is proud to have created impregnable fortress for the Führer on the other side of the Shangri-La world on Earth." He did not specify what kind of war it was, but it is more likely that he spoke of South America, where dictators openly supported Nazi Germany. In 2016, the Russian expedition accidentally found one of the Nazi bases in Arctic. The ruins of the base are located on the island of Alexandria, about 1000 kilometers from the North Pole. Base was put in operation by the Nazis in 1942, a year after Adolf Hitler invaded the Soviet Union. 72 years after leaving, it was rediscovered by Russian scientists who were conducting field research. With the code designation Schatzgraber, it means treasure hunter, the bunker was to serve primarily as the key meteorological station. During the World War II, it supplied the German army with weather information important for the transfer of troops and supplies on the East Front. Thanks to the pseudonym, some believe that the base may have served as control center for the search for and research of the artifact obsessed with the occult branch of the Nazi. Due to the frost, most of the found objects have been preserved, including several stacks of research documents, ammunition and petrol canisters. The Germans left the base before the end of the war in 1944, when some scientists died of the poisoning by rotten bear meat. The rest of the station's crew had to be evacuated by the German submarine. Post-war escape by submarines. On the morning of the 10th of July 1945, the German submarine U-530 arrived at the Argentine naval base Mar del Plata near Buenos Aires, 2 months after the German surrender at the end of the war in Europe. Rumors spread that the submarine had brought Hitler, Eva Braun, Martin Bormann and other Nazi elites. However, before the submarine reached Mar del Plata, it landed these people on the coast of Patagonia or Antarctica. A week later, the Hungarian exile Ladislav Sabo wrote in Argentina in a local newspaper a detailed report on how Hitler and his team allegedly escaped from Germany. The story quickly spread throughout the world, and its versions have appeared in other newspapers in many countries. In addition, on 17th of August, another submarine, U-977, arrived in Mar del Plata, which further supported these speculations. The commanders of these submarines and their crew were arrested and interrogated by military from Argentina, USA and Great Britain, but without the result, and the German crews were released. 2 years later, in 1947, Sabah published the book Hitler is Alive, claiming that the two submarines took fleeing high-ranking Nazi to Antarctica as part of submarine convoy. Although Heinz Schäfer, commander of U-977, denied the report, the story still spread because Schäfer never relieved what he was doing and where he had been 48 days from the time he last left his base in Rio until he landed in the Mar del Plata. Normally, the voyage would take him 9 days at the very slow speed. In another version of the story, it was only Hitler's ashes that were taken to Antarctica and placed in a special ice cave along with the Nazi treasures. There are a number of stories from several authors that follow similar patterns with some variations. However, the basic story is the same, that the German base in Antarctica was established just before war by the Schwabenland crew. The base was then expanded during the war and regularly supplied by submarines and was used to develop advanced secret weapons. And I will leave it entirely up to you whether you decide to believe this information or not. Huge thanks for watching this video, and if you like it, please remember to give it thumbs up. Leave comments below, I would love to read it from you. And if you are not subscribed, click subscribe. And also click the little bell icon so you will immediately get the notification the next video that I publish. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the next video.